Meditation, once considered as something for the monks and hippies, is now as mainstream as ever. From the beaches of Bali to the boardrooms, high power CEOs, award winning actors, Olympic athletes are all taking to meditation. Meditation has gone global and the benefits are vast, which is why in this series we invite accomplished guests who have embedded meditation deeply into their lives. Along our journey, we've been meeting people from different professions and countries. One profession, the profession of being an entrepreneur, is said to be more of a lifestyle than a part time or a full time job. It takes a lot to be an entrepreneur. Their challenges are unique, and so are their habits and their mindsets. Today, our guest is a young entrepreneur who has been meditating since he was a kid. Sanjiv Ahluwalia is a managing director for his technology services company who has been working in the UK for the past couple of years to manage the integration and growth of the company's UK office. I am eager and excited to chat with him about the art of balancing his life. Let's go ahead and welcome Sanjiv Ahluwalia on the show. Hi Sanjiv, how are you doing?
Hi, how are you?
Doing well, Sanjeev. It's so nice to be able to talk to you, and I hope you're doing well. I know you're juggling with two little kids and your own business. But Sanjeev, I know you've been meditating since you were a young kid yourself. So tell us about your experience or your journey in Sahaj Yoga, indicating, any milestones that you feel that our listeners might be able to relate to.
Sure. So for my experience has been pretty unique from a meditation perspective, in the sense that most people go about their normal lives, and then maybe at some point down the road they learn about meditation, they discover it, and they take an active choice, so to speak, to start meditating. So for me, my parents met in Sahaj Yoga when they were in their early 20s. And so, as early as I can remember, I've been meditating. It's been a very pivotal part of my life. If there was one point where I'd say, if there's one point that I'd think of as a kind of big milestone, in my own childhood, it was when I went to our school in Dharamshala, International Sahaj Public School. So Sahaj Yoga has a boarding school in the Himalayas, close to Dharamshala, and it's an international school. And that was a really interesting experience. I went there when I was in first, second, third, and fourth grade, right? So I was roughly 6, 7, 8, and 9 when I went to school, and it really, in many ways, I think it pushed me outside of my comfort zone, and in a way, pushed me to you know address a lot of things that I think many people might not ever address, or if they do address after, they take those things on at a much later stage in their life. But we were 6, 7 year old kids. We were missing our parents. We were from many different countries and cultures, right? So America, all over Europe, just about every European country, India, many Asian countries, African countries. And we all had different cultures. We had different habits that we had grown up with, even at a very early age. Those habits do sink in a little bit. And we all had to, over the course of many years that we lived and studied together, we moved past those superficial differences, those superficial cultural, national, ethnic differences, so to speak, and form really deep, long-lasting bonds with each other that were forged through the experiences that we shared, but also the common set of Sahaj values that we had, which, on a very deep level, we realized, superseded any sort of, superficial kind of national values that you might have come to the school with. So I think that was a really, pivotal experience for me growing up as a child. And then the next experience, I would say, or the next, you can say surprise, so to speak, was when I actually, moved to Dallas. So when I stopped going to, this boarding school in Dharamshala, and I actually came back, and it was in the late 90s, and I was essentially in a, suburban town in Dallas. I was in Plano at the time, and it was a really big transition, because you've had all these experiences. You've been in India. You've met people from so many different countries. You've you've meditated together. You've gone on treks, and you've explored all around India, and all of a sudden you're back at home, so to speak, and you have to, kind of find common ground with people that haven't had any of these experiences, and have a totally different perspective. So I think growing up as a child, kind of finding a way to kind of relate to people that you were in school with, and know that, okay, you had, there were things that you did that were kind of much different to what everyone else did, so to speak. That was clearly, probably a part of early, late childhood, and then the interesting thing though is that once I, started finishing high school and we started going to university, meditation was actually a topic that people were more familiar with. They were, showing interest in it. It was something that was gathered, that has been gathering a lot of interest, even over the last 10, 15 years. And so to see people interested, and all of a sudden they, they knew that I meditated and they wanted to learn about it. They wanted to learn about Sahaja Yoga and what we did, and what meditation meant for us. And so I had a really nice time in, my late high school and university, and then, professional years, actually talking to people about Sahaj, explaining what we do and how we do it. And in many cases, people have been really interested and have wanted to try it out for themselves. So,
You brought up a really good point, because the whole concept of the school that you went to, I mean, you learned some things which are so needed in the world today. I mean, it's so relevant, Sanjeev, the divides we're seeing and everything. And it's so beautiful for you to have gotten past, like you said, at a rather than later. You could do that sooner. So coming to now, the challenges of your profession, and just trying to understand how meditation helps you there. So like in most jobs, you can leave the work behind you when you go home, but when you are a business owner playing different roles, there's rarely a moment that you feel your work is done for the day. There's always something more you could be doing. You could be researching new markets, contacting media, keeping up with trends, developing new product services, and the list could go on, and that can eat away at the time that you could have been spending either with your family, yourself, or relaxing. Now, to enjoy a good quality of life, one has to learn to draw boundaries and cultivate that habit of slowing down and stopping at times. So how do you identify such moments when you need to detach from work, and how do you actually detach, and does meditation help you with that?
sure. So if I were to see, if I were to think about different ways that, meditation has, made an impact on my life professionally, I would say that, I mean, there's so many different things, but I think that one of the things that comes to mind is just as a, let's say, as someone responsible for a business, and you could be a business owner, you could be an entrepreneur, even a general manager, in a company who's responsible for a business line. You know, one of the biggest things that can happen is, you know, in a position like this is being, bombarded with, you can say, stimuli or different, different issues that come up that could take away from your focus. And I think that, when you're looking at a business, the one of the most important things to be able to successfully run a business is focus, and to have have a clear idea of where you want to go, define that strategy for yourself, or that vision for yourself and the company, and then move in that direction with a lot of focus and determination and discipline. And you have to be able to figure out when there's genuinely new information that's coming up that might compel you to change direction, and when you're just experiencing a bump in the road, or you're experiencing something that's actually a distraction that's not part of the bigger picture. And I think one of the things that meditation and Sahaja Yoga in particular has always helped me with is, as a very strong sense of focus and of non-reaction, so to speak. So, to be successful, I very strongly feel that you have to have a non-reactive approach to, to stick to what needs to be done without letting things, take away from your balance, so to speak. And I think for us in Sahaja Yoga, balance, being in what we call a state of thoughtless awareness, actually, funny enough, it saves you so much energy, because we waste so much energy in many cases thinking about things that we don't need to be thinking about. So if you actually think of your mind or your attention as a finite resource, right? Your brain really can only shoot so many synapses right before you get tired and you need to go to sleep. Then you think, okay, well, if I'm in a state of meditation and I'm doing things in a state of meditation, think of all the synapses that your brain's not firing, right? Think of all the energy that you're saving. You're not thinking about some, something on Amazon that you want to buy. You're not thinking about some new article of clothing that you need to get, or some new shop you need to visit, or some new food or dish at a restaurant that you need to try out, or your mind is very, very focused. And what at least I've realized in my experience is that when you do something like that, you save so much energy, and you actually have so much energy, in some cases, maybe doing twice the work than you would have if you were doing a normal amount, but thinking about all these other things and letting yourself get distracted. The other thing that I think is huge is being in a state of emotional balance. You can waste so much energy, getting upset about things, or letting something make you sad, or letting something make you feel angry or upset or frustrated. And to be able to have a what we believe is a higher level of spiritual connection, where you are connected to a higher power. You feel that everything happens for a reason. You can almost detach yourself and witness everything happening rather than being caught up in it. And one of the ways that I think my dad always kind of described it for me, or an analogy that he described for me, was like being in a wheel, so to speak. So if you imagine a wheel rotating, right? uh, you know if you're on the outside or you're on the periphery, you feel like things are moving very, very, very fast, right? It's the same amount of energy being expended, or being expressed. But if you're on the outside, you feel like things are moving very, very fast. But if you're deep and then you're in the center, a lot can be happening, but things still feel like they're not moving at a frantic pace. It's very calm, collected, and manageable. So I think that's one area where I would definitely notice a huge difference. And I make a point to meditate every day, because there is clearly a much different, a big difference in the quality of my days if I have my meditation in the morning, or I just jump straight into work. And you think that you're saving 30 minutes by not meditating, but actually, if you make the time, you have a much more enjoyable, fulfilling, and productive day. I think the other thing, which is very interesting, and again, I say very particular to Sahaja Yoga, is the fact that when you meditate, your chakras are awakened. And so not only can you feel your own chakras, but you can also feel the chakras of people around you. And if you ask me what's the biggest, I would say, one of the biggest, I don't even want to say advantage, so to speak, but one of the biggest positive side effects that you get from doing this meditation is that you yourself are in a state of positivity. Your chakras are nourished, they're enlightened, and you're pursuing, really to be the best version of yourself. But with this state of enlightened chakras and heightened sensitivity, you also then have a very strong feel and sensitivity for who you're around. And if there's one thing that's really amazing about this, is the fact that it somehow creates a lot of positivity in yourself, and it attracts positive people around you. And you know and I think as anyone responsible for a business, they would say that, look, the first thing, one of the most important things, is the people. It's assembling a great team. If you don't have a great team, there's very little you can do. The first step is having a great team around you. So just the ability to be positive and have so many positive people around you is really incredible. And sometimes it even defies logic, but you don't know how all these positive people have come into your life, how they met you, what is it about you that they like, but you send some positivity in them, they feel that positivity towards you, and then before you know it, you have a really, really amazing team. So I think that's one thing. And then the other thing, I think that's really, if you look at, in particular, if you look at between the, I guess between the, the Swadhisthana, the Nabi, and the heart, you have the what we call the void, right? And so, one of the biggest aspects, and you can hear Sri Mataji talk about this very frequently, is the Guru Tattva, the aspect of discipline, of peace. And I think in anything you do, if you want to do it well. I think to have a strong sense of attention, a focus of Guru Tattva is also very, very important, and to be able to meditate, awaken those qualities inside yourself. I mean, you can apply it to your profession, you can apply it to a job, you can apply it to, raising your children, you can apply it to, personal endeavors, but whatever you want to do in life, if you have that sense of Guru Tattva, so to speak, not only is it much more enjoyable, but it also seems to, not take as much energy, because in many cases, as Shri Mataji, commonly says, you're regularly says, you're not the doer, right? So it's kind of the analogy that I remember in one of her talks is, you can, you're sitting on a plane, right? And you can decide to either carry the luggage on your head or put it in the overhead compartment, right? You think you could put it on the head, but you're not the one carrying it, right? There's an engine, there's a plane, the whole thing's carrying it. So you can either put it in the compartment or hold on to it. And in the same way, I think if you have, through your meditation, you develop that habit of putting things in the compartment and genuinely, you can say almost, you could say surrendering it to a certain level, right? Surrendering those things, surrendering those attachments, in some cases being in a state of detachment. What you'll find is that so many of the challenges that you face, while you give them your absolute best, they don't weigh on you emotionally as much as they might if you weren't, doing something like meditation every day. And they take a lot less of an emotional toll on you than they otherwise might have. So those are a few things that I can think of.
And I think you've touched upon
Yeah.
some very, very important points in your response, but there are some that I'd like you to, maybe elaborate on more a little bit. So, meditation, it is said that has the capability to make a person more empathetic, positive, and a good communicator. Some qualities, that contribute to success as far as the association with your competitors, colleagues is concerned. And you did touch upon that point, working with teams and being more positive because you're a meditator. So with an improved association with colleagues, workers, competitors, whoever they are, any entrepreneur can gain more respect, more cooperation. And in order to be successful, it always helps to have good relations, not just with those outside, but also with whom you work. So tell us, Sanjeev, how you react or not react to people who may seem to be difficult. Do you have like any messages for the listeners as to how meditation helps you deal with those kind of challenges?
I think that's a great question. I think you have all these, so you have your chakras, right? One of my experiences that usually if you are reacting or you're, upset about something, maybe it's something that someone said or something that someone's done, it usually goes straight to the agya, right? And so, clearly we have things that we can do, that we say to really open up the agya. And I think one of the things that we'll say sometimes, look, I forgive everyone. I forgive everyone. It's not a specific person or a specific thing, but you just say, I forgive everyone. And I think that there's instances where, that can really open things up for you a lot. I think that, you talk about the empathy. I think when you're talking to someone, sometimes you can feel what someone's saying on a very deep vibrational level. And then it does give you a heightened sensitivity, which, funny enough, going to the UK 2 years ago, I was, it was the first time I'd ever worked in the UK. I'd never worked with anyone, in England before. And, you know, it's a completely different culture. It's a completely different way of thinking, and on every level. And there's things that matter to us in America that might not matter to someone in the UK. There's things that matter very deeply to someone in the UK that you might not think twice about. And so when you have that heightened level of sensitivity and you're talking to someone, it might be about a plan or something that you need them to do, or a certain proposition that you have for someone, you can, I think, on a very, very deep level, figure out how much it resonates with them and how they feel about it. And you can very quickly, on a very quick timeline, very quickly you can figure out what matters to that person. What really makes them tick. And if there's something happening, if they come into your office, do you feel like their heart's catching? Is there something that's on their mind on a deep emotional level? May sometimes people might disagree with you vehemently, But at least to, on the surface, they might nod and say, okay, yeah, let's do it. But if you're sitting next to someone and you feel, a very strong agya, so to speak, then you can say, okay, wait a minute, I might have said something, but whatever I said, that person is real, they might be very strongly reacting to. So it can go both ways. I think there's sometimes where you might be sitting with someone and you just, in a very kind of meditative way, you can feel their heart. You can feel that their heart might be catching a little bit. There might be some heat, so to speak, and you can say, okay, well, let me, figure out what's going on. Is it something personal? Is he insecure about something at work? What can I say to, put him in a better place, or her in a better place emotionally? So those are, I mean, there's so many ways that I think, intangible ways that it also helps, but those are a few things that just kind of immediately come to mind.
Well, that's great. And I think you're talking from a perspective, from an awareness, which is very different and very subtle from what most people have. The way we look at things, the way we perceive things with a limited mind, that is certainly very different from what you're talking as to, how you deal with people, situations, and seems like it's quite a different mechanism that you've learned to tune into. And then I think you also mentioned about the importance of having internal clarity, because I think deep inside each of us there is always a stillness and tranquility, but in our non-stop whirl of existence, it's just easy to forget that we can access it whenever we choose to. And I think just as much as it's hard to work at a cluttered desk and office, the mind also needs to be regularly cleansed and renewed for more clarity. But Sanjeev, before we let you go today, did you have like any final messages for entrepreneurs who are looking for coping mechanisms? Because there is an inherent stress of this professional engagement. Because as a business owner, you are the direct bearer of your choices, your decisions, your actions, as opposed to when you're working for someone else. So if there's anything that you'd like to speak to that, I would definitely love to hear that.
Oh yeah, definitely. I would say that, as that look as in our daily lives, in our society, and this is whether you're an entrepreneur, business person, or just, you could be anyone, right? But one of the things that you do is we're constantly ingesting things, right? And I think most entrepreneurs, uh, have an exceptional level of discipline, and most entrepreneurs I know are very conscious and careful about what they ingest, not only on a physical level, in the case of, what do you eat, what do you consume. They're also very conscious of what they ingest on an intellectual level. What do they read? What do they let command their attention? Do they just dive into the tabloids? No, they don't. They're looking at books, they're looking at things to improve their knowledge. Many entrepreneurs that I know are very disciplined about when they check their email, when they look at the news. So they're very deliberate about what and when they ingest intellectually. Also very many entrepreneurs are very conscious and aware of what they ingest emotionally, right? Who do they associate with? Who do they surround them with? Do they surround themselves with people that make them feel good, confident, and recharged and ready to take on challenges? Or are they around people that they might feel are draining, so to speak? But very, very conscious about, if I were to rewind a little bit, very conscious about, what you ingest physically, what you eat, what you ingest intellectually, what kind of things you read, what kind of media you consume. Very sensitive about what you take in emotionally. Who do you associate yourself with? What kind of emotional interactions do you have with people? What I would say is that, in addition to that, start thinking about what you ingest spiritually, right? There's so much that we don't know about the world, about the universe, how things were created, what our purpose is, why we're all here. Uh, but on a spiritual level, I think we've arrived at a stage in our evolution, and you see everything happening in the world around us. We have not found the answers. As a society, there is so much that we have not found the answers to, and so much that we can fix. And what I would challenge anyone that's in a position to impact change around them is the start thinking about what you are ingesting spiritually, right? What spiritual material are you ingesting? Are you even thinking about it? And what I would strongly suggest is, yes, today, make that a big part of your life. make that the key, and then in some ways I'd say the most important thing that you consider in your day-to-day life. And just like there's healthy foods, there's unhealthy foods, there's good intellectual material, there's incorrect intellectual material, there's positive emotions, there's toxic emotions that you can ingest. In the same way, I would say there's a lot of different types of meditation out there, but I can very strongly and unhesitatingly, with my whole heart, recommend that if you are going to make spirituality a part of your life and start making spirituality something that you do on a regular basis, then there are different types of meditation, but Sahaja Yoga is absolutely, in my opinion, the first and only one that you should try, because the positive impact that it'll have on your life will be seen everywhere, and it'll become a very integral part to who you are, and you won't, in many cases, you won't even be able to imagine that you ever thought about living your life without it. So if there's one recommendation that I would say to everyone that is in a position to affect change, and that's as an entrepreneur, as a general manager, or as someone in your day-to-day life, just think about spirituality, think about what you're doing, and give Sahaja Yoga a chance to positively impact your life.
It is so great
Yeah.
to hear that from someone as young as you. It's really a very impactful and relevant message. And thank you so much, Sanjiv, for taking the time and coming and talking to us about your experiences, about your insight. And thanks once again for being on the show, Sanjiv.
Thank you so much for having me, Monica. It was a pleasure to be on the show with you.
Thank you.